You're locked on to the SABC News Channel. I'm Krishna Govender. Well, the case of little Katlego Joja, the 10-year-old autistic child who went missing last week, has thrown the spotlight on the condition in the country. Katli's body was discovered in a stream not far from her home days after her disappearance. It's estimated that autism affects 1 out of every 59 children, making this the fastest growing developmental disability in the world today, and that 1 to 2% of people in South Africa right now are living with autism. That's over 1 million people. It's more common than childhood cancer, juvenile diabetes and pediatric AIDS combined. For more, we are joined in studio by Vicky Lamb, the educational specialist and regional development officer, Moeketsi, both from Autism SA. Good afternoon, ladies, and thank you for joining us on the SABC News Desk.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Krishna.
Mary, let's start with you, seeing that you're fresh from the neighborhood in Mamelodi. How are family members coping with the loss right now, and has the reality of Katli's loss really settled in by this stage?
The two family members that I met at the walk is an aunt and an uncle. Oh, they're hurting. You know, it's like the reality is really setting in that the little girl is gone, and it is very sad. It is very, very sad. As a parent myself, as a parent of a person with autism, it really hit me very hard last week when I got the message that the little girl had disappeared. So we tried, Vicky and myself, you know, putting, you know, the child's picture onto our Facebook, getting the pink ladies to help.
Yes.
Yes.
Vicky, I just want to bring you in here. There are so many myths around autism in general still in our country. What is the condition exactly? And more importantly, how do children like Katli who live with autism connect with the world around them?
So it's, in very technical terms, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder, and that means it affects the brain and the structure and the growth of the brain and how the brain develops in a child. Lots of research going into the way the brain works in the autistic child in comparison to the neurotypical child, but it affects the way a person interacts socially, it affects the way they communicate. They might behave in odd ways. They also have a different sensory profile to us. So where we can take in sensory information and our body and our brain can regulate that information, often the autistic person struggles with sensory information.
I know that autism will manifest in different individuals differently, but is there a possibility that an autistic child is prone to wandering off?
Definitely. We often, and this unfortunately is not the first case of an autistic child disappearing, and we often have parents contacting us about their child that just runs and wanders.
Mary, you've spent time with the family and community members and residents this morning, and they all played an integral role in the search for Katli, providing that support. How aware were neighbours and community members of Katli's condition, and how aware and conscientised were they around the condition of autism, would you say?
You know, people are still not aware of the condition. They look at the condition as a mental illness. The very good thing about this is that, you know, the community came together and went out to look for the little girl. But as for the awareness of autism, people are still not aware of the condition. They still do not understand. We took, you know, together with some other parents, some time to talk to people, try to explain to them what autism is, because we tend to think when we speak about autism, we just talk about a one-size-fits-all condition, whereas autism is a spectrum. If you've seen my son who's autistic, you haven't seen Katli, you haven't seen another child who also has got the condition.
Mary, there is, Vicky, there is a perception out there, and you're alluding to it, Mary, that autism in fact impairs intelligence, that it's a mental illness, but this is far from the truth. In fact, the opposite is true, because autistic individuals most often have superior intellect or heightened IQ.
So that's a difficult one to comment on. With autism, we cannot test IQ reliably. We don't know where the intellectual ability lies, and that is why often when we're doing training and when we're working with parents, what we do say to them is, don't assume that there's an intellectual disability.
But we have seen individuals who live with autism display a great aptitude for the arts, long-term memory skills, etc.
Definitely, there are. And again, as Mary said, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So we get individuals right across the spectrum, all with different strengths and different abilities.
The last time I spoke to your organization was about a year ago. At that point, there were currently only 5 government schools in the country for children with autism. Has there been any movement on that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more, particularly within Gauteng, there's a lot more. And we're starting to see more and more progression throughout the country with autism-related services. It's still not enough. We're still, and Mary can talk to you about her provinces that she works in, we're still fighting for those services to become available for our parents.
Mary, what kind of support do families with autistic children need to have in place right now, especially seeing that you're a parent of an autistic child yourself?
The type of the services, the support that parents need is the early intervention. You know, once a child has been diagnosed with autism, there is a need for early intervention so that we can, from the early age, start to train our children. Like, you know, autism is a lot to do with the behavior. So if we start training our children so that their behavior improves, that is the first service that we need. And secondly, we need schools for our children with autism, because when I was talking to Katli's uncle, he was saying to me, if Katli had a school to go to, maybe this could have not happened because she could have been at school. But you know, we really do not have enough school. Gauteng is a little bit better, but when it comes to the provinces that I actually do a lot of work in, Mpumalanga and Limpopo, we do not have autism-specific schools completely. We don't have. Even though the schools that are set to be put aside to take children with autism, they have long waiting lists. So a lot of children are at home.
Vicky, why do you think there's a delay in the delivery of schools for children with special needs, like our autistic children? Is it a lack of political will? Is it logistics? What do you put it down to?
I think it comes back to, there's still a stigma relating to a lot of disability, and that's most disability, not just autism. And I also think with autism specifically, the spotlight is now on autism. So now we're seeing services being rolled out, whereas 5-10 years ago, people weren't as aware as they are now. And we still need the awareness. As Mary said, there are still people out there who are not aware. But in terms of the political sphere who do make the decisions about the schools, I do think the awareness is there, and that is why we're starting to see the schools coming in services.
Vicky Lamb and Mary Moeketsi, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us so generously on the SABC News Desk. Both ladies from Autism South Africa joining us on the SABC News Desk.